All right, we're in Gold Coast with Andrew Bogues. We're in your Batman lair. What is this place for people listening?
See, it's a secret. You just ruined it. Just a multi-purpose building, I call it. Yeah.
Can I say what's in here, or will that
Yeah, you can. You
set
can.
a security flare?
No, you can.
It's like there's 6 cars that are probably like the net worth of the Gold Coast. There's a sauna steam gym. There's a TV just playing sports from everywhere. It's pretty cool. How long have you been here for?
I had the building for a couple of years, and if you would have seen it before I did all the work, it was really bad. Had asbestos in it. Was an old mechanical workshop that I don't think was cleaned in 40 years. So just went through the whole process, gutted it, did it all myself, no architect, and this is end result. So you kind of use it as an office, a gym, and poker table there, store some cars here, just kind of made it the place away from home to get away. And I've had business meetings here. I've had all kinds of shit. So
Yeah.
and obviously the podcast studio was something I always wanted to do. So we made some room for that. Soundproofed it. It's probably one of the best in Australia, I'd say, as far as soundproofing. I probably over committed the budget to that a little bit, but it's pretty good.
I remember in Geelong there was like a public school that got bought by Geelong Grime. It was like asbestos filled, and then they changed it, and this feels like it.
Does it?
The transformation of it going from like asbestos riddled to like.
Oh, you got to do a lot of work. There wasn't a lot, thankfully. There was just a couple of sheets of it. The rest is all concrete walls. So I literally just gutted it
Yeah.
to the concrete walls and started all over again. Got it all cleaned out and dropped the ceiling in, and that's the way it's going now with industrial areas. People are noticing that you can get much more value for your buck even if you're just an office worker. Get an industrial area, put a little office in there, have storage space for your other shit, instead of paying these big downtown, big city office rental spaces.
What do you reckon listeners think? Because we're kind of in different algorithms.
I'm in the banned algorithm on Instagram. We joke about like.
Are you shadow banned?
Oh, I'm heavily shadow banned. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Twitter's okay. Facebook's hit or miss, but Instagram's heavy. Yeah,
You don't come up for me as much, even though I follow you.
A lot of people.
We
say
follow
that,
each other.
Well, a lot of like I have family that follow me, and they're like, we don't see your videos, and I'm like, fuck, like it's because I posted, when I was posting anti-lockdown stuff, and
They
all
went
that
on
kind of
you.
stuff. Yeah, they put the whole this person has posted misinformation when you follow me.
I remember.
So I'm heavily
Shadowed.
muted. Yeah.
Yeah, there should be like an Instagram court though, like after everything. Now you can be like, all right.
Especially now,
Yeah.
everything coming out, it's like, they're basically just like, you're kind of right, just shut the fuck up about it. It's just like, all right, cool, whatever. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so there's no way you can't contact Instagram and be like, hey, I'm back to basketball content.
I'm not actually, still do a bit of everything, but
Yeah.
no, they're one of those many companies that are uncontactable. You go to the contact page and it goes to someone in, I don't know what country in the world that's just send you that automated response. We had issues at times trying to get, I actually had an episode of my podcast removed. Yes, this was about 2 years ago that just got removed. I received a cease and desist letter, and I didn't act upon it, but they made it. I just ignored it completely and was like, "What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah.
And they got to Spotify and got them to remove an episode. No, sorry, not SoundCloud. They got them to remove an episode.
Damn.
Just disappeared.
People go for you. Like, the weirdest thing is how we kind of met was that like there was a political staffer who wanted me to make something on you. Do you remember that?
See, can you tell everyone about
Yeah, it
this?
was
Because everyone is saying I'm full of shit and conspiracy theorist, and there was a journalist that actually emailed me and said, I've contacted the Labor Party or Dan Andrews people office, and they heavily deny these accusations. You're the one that told me about it.
Yeah.
So now can you throw yourself into the conspiracy theory of this?
I'm happy to go to the conspiracy realm. No, well, I mean, it was like 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago. And it was a political staffer from Fiona Patton's office who said, Bogues is saying some crook shit about Fiona. Can you slam him with a TikTok?
Thank you.
And I was like, I can't be fucked. It's like now because I'm mates with Friendly Geordie. Sometimes he'll be like, can you do this video on this? And I'm like, I can't be fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
I'm
don't
not
want to do
getting
other
involved.
people's bidding.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, like you don't want to be a fucking...
If you're actually passionate about it, no problem. But
You're
like,
a prostitute.
And if they, a couple of years ago, you weren't as big as you are now, right? So
Yeah,
no offense,
yes.
but you were like,
True. Yeah, for sure.
if they're going to you, imagine how many other people they're going through. and not just that, there's people, people were going at me on big time stars on network television and this
Yeah.
and that. I was getting an absolute barrage, and I was like, cool, I don't care. Like, this is my opinion. I'm giving my opinion. Not going to stop me doing it because it's a ploy to try and tell you to shut up and silence you, and hopefully you go in your little cave and don't come back out and say anything because you don't want that backlash. But I couldn't care about the backlash. It was, and now, like I said, 2 years on, a lot of what I said was pretty on par with what we're hearing today.
That was a stress. 2 years ago, though, it was still stressful. Do you feel like you're out of that stressful? Do you reckon in the culture it was kind of just heavier? Like,
yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
It was heavier.
And we were, Australia was
even in Melbourne. There's like earthquakes and shit happening. It was like biblical.
Everything that went, It was just. I just remember like people were tuning into these premier press conferences like they were sporting events. Like it was the draft every day. You're listening like, oh, are we allowed to go outside tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, it's another. And you're just like, man, it was a crazy time. How hard we've been in Australia, and hopefully. I don't think our politicians and bureaucrats have learnt from it, but I think the people have. So I think I'm really intrigued that if this was to happen again or similar circumstances were to arise in the future, whether the will of the people would be much different.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how easy, because in my mind, like you kind of just forget, because like you don't really want to think about past historical things. But like definitely I reckon from 2 years ago to now, there's definitely a switch where like even my brain feels lighter, because you're not just like taking in all that information, being inside all the time.
Well, that was a big thing, especially in Melbourne.
That's why you came here.
Yeah.
That's why you're in Goldie now.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I kind of, I'm Melbourne born and bred, loved Melbourne, grew up in it. But every time I came home, NBA off seasons, I noticed subtle changes in Melbourne slowly. But we're so ingrained in like Melbourne's the best and, the entertainment capital and culture. We're so cultural and all this kind of stuff. So you come back and you kind of deny what's changed. I know it's not that bad, but then my wife and I started talking like this isn't the Melbourne we grew up in. It's much different. It's become a huge city now. There's a lot of different pros and cons to it. And then once COVID started, it was like, nah, we're out. It was just becoming a very political place. Every day there's a protest in Melbourne. Like you come up here in Queensland and, Gold Coast has its issues as well, obviously, and Queensland has different issues, but the sun's out.
Yeah.
And what we noticed were people were happier. We noticed people, you walk down the street, go for a walk at 5 a.m. People get up early as fuck here, by the way. And people say good morning to you. I had a mate come from Melbourne, and he went for a morning. He stayed with me for a couple of days, and he went for a morning walk along the beach. And he goes, man, I was ready to fucking punch on because someone said good morning to me. Because he's like in Melbourne, like it's like you walk down the street, if someone talks to you, you're ready to go. Like no one says good morning or how's it going, all that kind of stuff. It's like dark, gloomy, jacket on, like just trying to get to it. And it was just an interesting observation by him, being a Melbourne guy. Like it's just different here, and it is. And I think the sun's a big part of that.
It has come back though. Like, have you been back in the last?
I go back every couple. Yeah, look, I
like the nightlife and stuff and everything. Like people are out, and there's.
I've noticed it's more local. I've noticed people. What COVID did was it made people realize that there's stuff locally now.
They're staying in their burbs.
Yeah. And a couple of my mates that live in fringe suburbs. There's like little gastro pubs that have popped up and stuff and that are open till 1, 2. So you're not getting nothing a nightclub feel, but it's So then people are just like, oh, let's just go for a drink at my local. Like, whereas before it was like City, St Kilda, Paran, Chapel. All that
you got to go somewhere.
Yeah, now it's kind of I think people are staying local. So I think that's a good thing for local businesses, but. But it's just so busy, man, to me. I think it's getting busier and busier. And I notice, when I lived in Melbourne, I used to conduct all my business from 10 till 2. So I was like, outside of that, I'm not going to the city before that.
Yeah,
I'm not if I'm leaving the city after 2, I'm not doing the appointment. I'd always try to do it that way. Now that's even starting to change where it doesn't matter anymore. It's getting so busy and it's just a busy place. But, I enjoy visiting it as far as the day-to-day living grind of Melbourne with kids. I like it much better up here. If I was single or just my wife and I, or girlfriend at the time, probably Melbourne, Sydney, just because more, bigger city. But with kids, to me, it's, driving a sport, driving to this, driving to that. In Melbourne and Sydney is just, you spend half your day in the car, and that's something that I noticed here. You got much more time to do the finer things.
When did you move from Melbourne to the States? How old were you?
I went to Canberra first for 2 years at the AIS. I left Melbourne at 16 and a half, 17, and then from Canberra went to the US. So I haven't lived in Melbourne full time since like 2001.
Because to me, you've always had like a more of an American perspective than an Australian perspective. Does that make sense?
I think it kind of changed. Yeah, I think I kind of changed with time, and I think like most people, as you go from teenager to 20s to 30s, your perspective on things changes. You know, like for an example, I was like heavily anti-gun, like coming from Australia, ingrained on the whole, why do you need a gun, all that kind of stuff. And now I feel like I'm more balanced. I'm not, you know, in a spot where everyone should just own a gun. I'm not that guy, but I'm also like, I think you should be allowed to own a firearm in your own home. I'm that position. So that's just one small
In Australia?
Example. Yeah.
But can you imagine?
License.
But can you imagine if the government came out and they're like, all right, everybody can have a gun? It'd be
no, but it's not
the
everyone.
people I know in Melbourne, if they had a gun.
It's not everyone. Everyone could have a firearm. It's still a arduous, hard process to go through all that, and there's a lot of criminal like Australian.
I want them all forensics on them.
But I think I'm more of the whole like you should be allowed to have them in your own home, not outside your home. I don't think you should be able to walk around with a firearm. But you know, you look at Australia, it's like, and the US, it's like generally, I don't want to get in the whole gun debate, but it's the people that have them all have them illegally, and are the bad people.
Yeah, but I mean, like even in Melbourne right now, like all the knife stuff. Like, replace a knife with a gun, those same people are just going to use that weapon, right?
Yeah, but those same people aren't going to be able to get a firearm.
But they will, though. Why couldn't they?
Well, legally, you mean? Legally?
Like, they could get it on the black market, for sure.
Well, they could get it on the black market now.
But if those legal guns could become illegal.
Which is already happening. That's my point. That's how it gets on the street. Like, the number on the street is, I don't even know what the number would be, infinitely more than legal, I'd say, in Australia.
I would say like it's interesting. Like America seems like has too many guns, so you could never take those guns.
No, they're way past it. Yeah,
there's so little guns. It's like why introduce it? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's just my perspective. Like I just feel like protecting your own home with what we're seeing today, with the amount of home invasions, especially down in Melbourne, which is not reported as much as it should be. I know for a fact because I've had family get hit down there and up here on the Gold Coast, and that it's at some point. You know, you should be allowed to protect your own home. That's my only thing with that kind of stuff is you should be allowed to protect your own home at all costs. I believe, especially with two young kids at home. But that's a perspective that I've changed on. You know, I said, I came from Australia and I was anti it, and what do you need it for? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, all criminals have them, so it's like, okay, well, so should a regular citizen that's done nothing wrong in their life be able to go through the process? Which, by the way, in Australia takes a year, 1 to 2 years for you to get a firearm in your hands.
Okay.
It's not an easy process, and they make you jump through a bunch of hurdles and tick a bunch of boxes, like all things in Australia. So it wouldn't be, as you're saying, everyone would just be able to go and get one tomorrow. The US is the other extreme where you can like 24-hour background check, and the next day you walk around with a shotgun. No, not saying anything like that. Responsible firearm ownership.
You do feel it in the air though. Like I can't remember. I said last time, like I went for 6 months. I was on exchange in Los Angeles at a college, and like. If you're in big crowds and stuff, you feel it. You're like, fuck.
Well, California, it's illegal, so you shouldn't feel it there.
Is it?
Yeah.
You can't.
Firearm.
Damn. All right. I was scared for 6 months for no reason.
I mean, obviously, rurally in that you can have some sort of firearms.
Yeah.
But I think California, Illinois, these states where the highest amount of shootings are the strictest gun laws. So there's always that debate, and that's where that's where people always fire up. But like Illinois is one of the worst in the world per capita of shootings. And firearms are illegal there. So
well, I had a girlfriend. She lives on a farm. Like she was like a farming family.
Yep.
And so I went into like her dad had guns and stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was possible.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah, I walked in the shed. I was like, damn, like the dad-in-law's got guns.
I had friends that had hundreds.
Holy shit.
Like over in the US, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds on their properties. And
but so farmers have them, like in Australia?
But you still got to go through the process.
Yeah.
You can't just go, oh, I own a farm, give me a firearm. You got to go through the whole process to do it all. And it's very, very strict. But on a farm, you obviously heavily need them because you got dingoes, you got road kangaroos, you got, so if you've got pets and family and that, and you've got 100 acres, something comes up trying to kill you, you got to shoot it. It's just the way it is. Especially if you've got cattle and all that kind of stuff. Foxes come in, you've got chickens and all that stuff. So,
I remember being asleep one night and then like hearing a gunshot, and in the morning it was like, oh yeah, a sheep like got attacked by a fox. I had to shoot it. It's like,
normal.
Oh damn.
That's what I mean. We're so coming from Australia. It's kind of like you never hear those stories. But out rurally you do. Like the farmers are all clear with it. But man, you must be moving up in the comedy world.
I'm drinking Voss now, baby.
Jeez. I just got a regular filler, mate.
Yeah, because you know why I get this is because if you go to the service station, it's all in plastic. And I don't want the plastic.
Oh, you're on the reading all the particles?
I try to. I don't want the microplastics in my dick. Yeah. I try to get it. There's an article that said if you have a dick, it's probably like 10% plastic now.
Really?
Just in the microplastics.
No, it is interesting. I've been reading a lot.
So
of
if I can go glass, it costs like $1 more.
I'd definitely buy glass over
If I
plastic,
can,
100%.
but
It's just, it is pretty fancy.
It's fucking hilarious holding Voss, yeah. I'm just gonna start refilling it and turn up to comedy gigs and make my friends feel insecure. They're like, wait, what venue's Ferg doing now?
Yeah, you're doing so well. Shit. Well, fuck.
It's kind of true that if you drink the fancier stuff, people they don't even question it. They're just like, he must be killing it.
You must be doing well.
Yeah. Whereas what type of water would you be like, fuck, he's on his...
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just...
Well, your trajectory is one of the most insane ones in Australia, I've always thought. Because you grew up out of burbs in Melbourne, and now you're sitting here and there's like 6 cars. If you can't see it, you can't if you're listening as well. But the cars are stunning. They're amazing.
Yeah.
So like when you were... I always get confused, but it's these and it's Doncaster or Dandenong. Which
Dandenong.
one?
Oh, you can't confuse those two. That's like Doncaster and Dandenong. No.
They're kind of close.
Oh, close what?
Like proximity?
30-minute drive.
Yeah, but it's all out that way,
The bank accounts are a few zeros different on properties around those areas.
Has Dandenong got rougher? I feel like it has. I had a friend who got jumped on the Dandenong train station.
Dandenong's always been rough. Yeah,
Will it ever not be rough?
No. There's a lot of commission houses, a lot of low entry point for first home buyers.
Yeah.
I remember the Dandenong station was a place you didn't want to be when the sun went down. And
Yeah.
I'd have to go through that as my transit station because my suburb didn't have a train station. So I saw some shit almost every day. Just catching the bus to school, and then whenever I had to go anywhere into this, Dandenong in towards the city or whatever, I'd have to take the train, and it was very interesting. Yeah, I mean it's an interesting place.
Was that highlighted in your story? Like when you were doing interviews coming up, even being like #1 draft pick, or people that always come from this really tough area and now he's playing in the NBA?
In Australia, not really. In the US, no one gave a shit because like everyone in the US comes from, at least in the NBA, come from rougher areas.
Yeah.
Or they claim to. You come to figure a lot of guys.
You got to claim it.
Well, you come to figure a lot of guys actually grew up pretty well, but have to claim the street cred stuff.
Yeah, you have to.
And then when the people that actually bothered to ask realized that I was from a pretty rough area, they still don't believe it because like Australia, like, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Because you're white and this and that, you're from overseas, they just think naturally you couldn't have grown up rough. And I'm just like, actually, Eastern European family, couldn't speak English, came in, 70s, 80s, parents dealt with a lot of shit, and then growing up out there was pretty tough at times. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it was a great part of who I am today, and the lessons learned, the amount of street smarts that was just instilled just by, it had to be otherwise. You might get stabbed by a junkie on a bus, no, seriously.
That prepares you for the court though.
Yeah, but no, seriously, you get on a bus and you're like, why have they put the purple strobe lights on my bus? And you're like, oh, so they can't find their vein. You're like, what the fuck?
Is that real?
Yeah, my bus
Holy shit.
the bus line from where I live to my school went through a whole phase where it all turned purple, and you're like, as a kid, you're like, what the fuck? And then you realize like they did that so they can't hit their veins on a bus.
I can kind of remember a purple bus.
You can't?
I know I can.
Yeah.
But I thought that was just like
all my routes.
like a sound and light effect.
Oh,
I thought they were doing it for the vibe.
So you get on a bus and you could clearly see like, oh, I'm not going to sit over there because that guy looks like he's twigging out.
Yeah.
That guy is a big dude that's probably like ready to snap and punch someone. I'm just going to sit over this area with the old lady. You just kind of knew like, okay, well, this is my stop, but there's a few people that are just hanging out there that might cause me some trouble. I'll just take the next stop and walk. So you just, as a young kid, you shouldn't have to think about that shit, but you had to. Otherwise, you end up getting rolled for whatever you've got on, or you end up getting punched, or you end up getting spat on, or whatever it is, right? So
it's kind of gotten a lot worse. Like in Melbourne, like especially because people more on that, like, it feels like there's not as much money in the economy, whether that's true or not. Like there's a lot more people on the street who are just like openly, like on drugs, walking around. Like even I was in Carlton the other night and a dude came up and I was sitting with my friend and was like, we were kind of like, fuck, this guy, we could just get easily, like you kind of got nothing to lose.
yeah.
So it's like, why wouldn't he just jump us?
Yeah, you're going to give him whatever he wants, right?
He's like, I think he said, do you want to buy a device? And we're like, no, we don't need any devices. He's like, no, I got a good device for you. And I was like, fuck.
Just come with me around this corner. Yeah, I mean, look, and that's the problem with big cities, and that's another reason why we kind of got out with kids was just, the great thing about big cities is you've got variety of restaurants and culture, entertainment, all that. Totally get it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you have that stuff in your face, especially with both sides of government, left, right, in that state. Just putting safe houses to shoot up next to schools, like just shit like that. You're just like, what the hell are we doing? Like, what are we doing? I don't want to be part of that kind of city or society. And yeah, it is interesting going back there and seeing something. I kind of try to stay away from the city for the most part, unless I have to go in there when I go there. Stay a little bit out of the city, but that's the, I guess, what you got to deal with in big cities all over the world. You look at London and London, San Francisco, and New York, and it's kind of happening everywhere in these bigger cities. The homeless epidemic or crisis is happening everywhere. But we've still got money to send over to wars overseas and all that kind of stuff. But we've got people living on the street. It always made me scratch my head.
Well, it's wild that, like, I remember when I got to America at 21, like, you get off the plane and you drive past Skid Row, and like as an Australian, you're like.
This will never happen in Australia.
Yeah, well, kind of like that level of homelessness. You hope it wouldn't happen in Australia, but it just like it's in America. They kind of just go, "It be what it be. If you make it, you make it."
Yeah, yeah. But there's also a lot of people that want to do. It's not like that was their only path. There are some people that are just like, fuck it. Like, I just don't want responsibility, and mentally just checked out and were like.
Well, a lot of it's probably psychiatric.
100%.
You know,
and you've noticed that, like, people always make the joke about you don't see the people in the white van and the white suits jumping out and grabbing people these days, like you did back in the 60s and 70s, right? No, seriously though, it's a joke. Yeah. It's one you can use. Feel free to use it, but you don't see that anymore. But you just see them on the street now, asking you to buy a device, right? Whereas back in the day, they'd take you away and be like, try to at least rehab you. Like, hey mate, you come with us for a month. We're going to put you in this padded room. Yeah. We're going to try to get you right and put you back into society. We don't do that anymore either, right? It's frowned upon. And
shutting down mental health hospitals.
Yeah, that's their truth. Let them run around the street half naked and poop everywhere, but that's just an interesting observation. Yeah.
Do you think that when was your first time you're like, I'm not like poor anymore? Like when you went from Dandenong to America, was there a moment where like do you feel it? You're like, damn, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, probably just my rookie year. Like being able to just, I went to college and I went probably even poorer in college because I just had no money whatsoever and had to work and do some extra jobs just to make some money. College was a nightmare back then. It's not what it is today. You can now, all these college kids can actually get endorsements and stuff that was completely illegal when I was in college.
Yeah.
And then getting to the NBA, it took me a couple of years to realize that I could not have to stress about things. Like I'd buy something that, you go and buy a nice suit for a couple of grand. You'd be like, oh, it's so expensive. And then it just took a while to flick that switch in your brain and be like, I can afford this. Like, stop stressing about it.
I'll get the Voss water.
Yeah, get the Voss water. I can, and then, even to mid-career, I'd always try to, like, before I had kids, I'd try to get the best deal on hotels and all that kind of stuff. Stay at nice places, but try to, like, and whereas now it's like, no, I'll just stay at the best place. I can afford to do it. What am I doing? Like, what I'm going to save an extra couple $100 a night. I reckon, so it does take a while to transition from that, especially growing up from where we didn't have a whole lot. We had good times and bad times, don't get me wrong. Like when the economy was good, my dad's business was doing well. We were kind of bumping that middle class area. Yeah. But there were times like the recession in the 80s where my parents were like, shit, like we can barely put food on the table. It was kind of the same meal 5 days in a row. Yeah. As kids, you kind of somewhat figure something's fucking going on here. Like there's a big ass pot of food that we've eaten and we're just dipping bread in.
We're in an Easy Mac every night.
Exactly, yeah. So, but yeah, it takes a while to flick that switch. And I still catch myself with some things trying to like barter or do. I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. But that's just where you grew up. You're always trying to get a better deal.
Because sometimes I think I spoke about that with Geordie's, like, because you're very outspoken and you have like a freedom of speech where like you feel confident where you can just say what you want to say. And like we were saying, we have friends who are comedians and they've kind of stopped doing live shows or they've stopped selling tickets and they're only doing stuff at a network like a Channel 10 or like ABC or Triple J or something. And they're scared to speak out because they'll lose all that, Like, do you feel like you have a freedom because you got that money when you were young? So like, what can they really take away from you?
Somewhat, yeah, definitely. I think I definitely am able to. And look, I got in trouble throughout my career at certain points from the league, from people about my opinions or thoughts. And it's kind of like, okay, like, so people that say, oh, you're now retired and you made loads of money, so of course you can do what you want. If you check back my history, I've actually
been speaking.
Yeah, but it's been, we're a pretty outspoken family and my dad's pretty outspoken. And I was always kind of told if you asked a question, answer it to your best of your ability, honestly. Whereas my agent, I had this debate. We had this debate with my agent, and I think he brought it up on my podcast when I had him on, and he was like, I was trying to kind of, mentor you into not not going hard on things and being super direct. And the example was like, if your wife came in wearing something and she looked fat in it and she asked you, do I look fat? Would you say yes? And I was like, yeah, I would. It's like, so that was kind of the example that he used, right?
Yeah.
And it was fair. Like I definitely needed to tweak a little bit as a young fella, but that's just trying to reiterate that I've been like this since I was 17, 18, 19 years old, you know. And yes, I do. I'm in a position that I can do and say what I want, but there have been a lot of losses along the way. Like I've lost out on a lot of media deals and marketing deals because people are like, we don't know what he's going to say. So, you know, we can't really put him into a lane to kind of push what we want to push. He might go fly off the radar a little bit and go outside of our norms. So we'll just leave it alone. Where the people you've spoken about, they're just towing the company line. The same ones that were pushing all the vaccine stuff, all the lockdown stuff, all that kind of do the right thing, blah, 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 blah. Today, they're awfully quiet on all that stuff, you know, and it's blatant with who those people are, and they're network TV lifers, I call them. They're in that cycle for a reason, because they can be useful idiots for a lot of these people, a lot of these politicians, a lot of, you know, different agendas pushed through network television, which I figured out. I don't know if you did, but I figured out heavily during COVID. You know, when you see why a lot of the news reports and whatnot were pushing some of this stuff so much, and then you realize, well, their biggest sponsors are the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, this, that, for all the advertising stuff, you know. So they have to kind of toe the line and not have contrary opinions to the very thing that the government's pushing.
That whole thing, like, it almost doesn't make sense to me now, because I'm like, why would they want to lock it down and everything if it was like it's going to destroy their economy? Like, that's what I'm like, it's just like, because the inflation's so fucking high right now, where it's like, why? That's, I mean, I know people kind of like sick of that whole era, but it's so confusing to look back on that time.
And why they would do it?
You're like, just fuck. You're like,
I don't know what the play was, but, you know, all I know is the gap has further widened between have and have nots. It's never, you know, it's been a long, long time since we've been in a position where you've been such a huge disparity in you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
It seems like the middle class is somewhat starting to be eroded.
There's this Australian beef in Japan that's being sold for
I saw that.
less than beef in fucking.
They're trying to say, oh, it's because they have their own beef industry that's competitive, so it has to be cheaper. Like, fuck off. Like, what a load of shit. Like, why? This is my thing with Australia. We're one of the most overly resourced countries in everything, man. Coal, gas, gold, opals, this, that, farming, clean water. Like, we have everything. We have an abundance of everything, and it's not benefiting the people. And it's always been an issue. I'm like, why the fuck are we paying more for our own beef than people that have to actually export it there and package it there? And then and it goes with everything. We just get absolutely screwed. Our gas resources, like all these multinational companies that own our gas, like, it goes over there cheaper than what we're paying for it. And you're just like, what the fuck's, you know, that's ridiculous. Because people can't afford to heat their homes in winter sometimes. You hear the story every winter of some old couple, old family dying either in the cold or because they've wheeled in a Bunnings gas heater into their bloody lounge room and they die. And you're like, how's that happening in Australia? Like, we're one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, but it doesn't benefit its people. And I think it starts at the top. It's, you know, our high, you know, politicians and this and that and Parliament are a big blame for that.
I think people are starting to give a fuck now. Like, even I have friends who are like, they're kind of waking up to it and they're like, okay, you can't just be like, she'll be right. Like, you've actually got to do something or say something, or else you do have those multinationals, you know, owning gas companies and then none of that money going back to people, you know, or back to citizens.
Yeah, and we spoke to Senator Malcolm Roberts, had him on my show a couple of weeks ago, which will drop shortly. But my question to him was, okay, so how do everyday people help? And he said, the first step is stop drawing dicks on ballot papers when you go to vote.
True.
You know, because there is people out there that say your vote doesn't matter and this and that, but the more and more people that go in and actually be informed, and being informed doesn't mean you need to be involved in politics on a day-to-day basis, because you want to blow your head off listening to these bananas talk every day, right? But it's doing maybe just an hour of research before you go to your local council election, before you go to your state election, your federal election. Just do an hour of research through all the potential people you can vote for, and align with what your views are and who you are. But I think there are far too many people. I've got friends that do it, labourers and stuff, like, fuck, I have to go vote. I'm just going to go because I get fined, and they draw a dick on the ballot, and it's a wasted vote, right?
Yeah.
So that definitely needs to change. And I think, to your point, I think more and more people are like, okay, like, I need to be a bit more informed with this stuff, and it's not going to take hours and hours and days of your life, but I think it is important to kind of research that stuff.
Would you ever want to do politics at some point? Never?
No.
Even though you like speaking on.
It's just the game, like for my life with two young kids,
Yeah.
to go into that, it just, I think it's just it's a tough, grimy industry. I think, and I just wouldn't last. I'd be out of chambers. I get booted. I get warnings. I get this because I couldn't sit there listening to, like, even Senator Malcolm Roberts. I was asking him, like, you know, when they have these inquiries and they ask these politicians, they have the Woolworths CEO on, they have all these people, and I'm like, they don't answer your fucking questions. Like, you're asking them a question and then they're like, I'll take that on advisement and get back to you. They never get back to you, or you'll ask them, like, you know, hey, so it's a sunny day today. It's like, yeah, yesterday I went to, you know, took my kids here and there. I didn't ask you that.
Yeah. Well, they're media trained.
100%.
So it's like, this is.
Well, there was that thing that there was a policy put out from, was that in the US or here? It was that they put out how to answer the Senate inquiry, and they had I think it was the Labor Party. I might be wrong. I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
But there was someone giving like a dot point memo to when you get called into a Senate inquiry of how to circumnavigate answering the questions so you don't put yourself in shit.
Yeah.
And it just goes in a circle jerk, you know. And that's both sides. That's not just Labor. It's not just Liberal. It's both sides of politics. And I'm so moved towards being anti the two big parties in this country.
Have independence in there.
Yeah, and I just Liberal, and like, because I can't stand Labor, and then people are like, oh yeah, the Liberals are shit too. I'm like, totally agree with you. And then those same people that are like Labor lifers or Liberal lifers, they don't know what to say to you. They're like, hang on, you should be going for one of these two. I'm like, it's not a sporting event. Like, I don't like those two because I don't think they're good for our country. But unfortunately, people vote for them like they are the Collingwood Magpies or the Melbourne Storm, right?
What's even interesting, like, I remember like on a school camp going to Parliament, and you look at former parliaments and the jobs they did, and now it's all like they were like career staffers or lawyers. But back in the day, it was like there were people like occupation plumber, like and politician, you know, like representing your local electorate. So I feel like if you get more just citizens in there, you know, like even just average people, like whatever, teachers, you know, people who you don't have to be a lawyer or you don't have to be like a lifelong political staffer, and representing your electorate, you probably get more outcomes,
more balance, and know what the common man, common woman is going through, you know, running their own business. Have some people that have, most of these politicians haven't run their own business. I would have that as a prerequisite, like,
and they might not live in their electorate even.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is wild.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the craziest.
Yeah,
thing.
you've got like some. Like
they
an
get
electorate for Dandenong who lives in Brighton. You just like,
seriously,
what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like,
and they wonder why Dandenong Station sucks. It's like because you do this in Brighton.
As long as Brighton's fine. Well, hang on, you're up at Dandenong. It's like, I drive in there once a week. I drive to my office. But that's what I mean. It's very frustrating just watching that from afar. But how does it change? It does start with the people. But I just think, you know, I'm not condoning anarchy, but that's the one thing I like about the Europeans. When shit really hits the fan,
French go for it. Yeah.
Oh, there's firebombs coming. there's blocking Parliament. There's I don't know if you've seen the climate accord, or the all the rules they've put in for farmers in a lot of these places in Europe, Netherlands and whatnot. That they've all got on their tractors, like blocked freeways. They brought manure to the Parliament and like sprayed manure on the steps and stuff. And like they're going hard. So look, I hope the next time Australia is in a situation where there's a bit of, you know, there's some issues where the people feel like they're getting shat on. I just hope there's a bit more pushback than just letting our politicians just run riot.
What do you think about the Trump guilty verdict that happened last night? I don't know when this podcast will go out. Yeah, I just heard it on the radio this morning.
I'm in a group chat with a bunch of people, but someone posted it. I mean, I don't know what the end game is with all this. I mean, it seems like I would agree that it's obviously political. And people that say it isn't, they're like, you know, you look at what Joe Biden's son has been through, which has some sort of connection to Joe Biden, in my opinion.
He had a fun time in Ukraine.
Yeah, but
doing
just
blow.
like, but just like using his dad as like, I can get you contact with my dad, like, you know, get me some crack, like, you know, give me more prostitutes. You're just kind of like, that's just being like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's clearly political to stop Trump from being able to campaign and run.
Yeah.
And I think I think I agree with people that say it's a pretty dangerous precedent when you can do that, because this is my thing with these kind of things is the people that are supporting it. So say you're a lifelong Democrat and you're like, this is great. Yep, Trump should go to jail. He can't run. Ha, ha, ha. This is now setting a precedent that it can be done the other way around one day, right? The Republicans can then do this one day to the Democrats. It's the same thing here. Whatever Labor does to Liberal or Liberal does to Labor, eventually that other party is going to be in power and they're going to do the same fucking thing. So that's where it's pretty dangerous territory. And yeah, I'm interested to see how it all goes and where it all ends up.
What's scary because I'll have like progressive friends who are like cheering, like, yeah, Trump's guilty, he's gone. I'm like, exactly, like this could, if this is inversed,
You'd be losing
like,
your mind.
Yeah, you just
it's a fail. It's democracy's failed. Democracy's manifest. You know, and you're just like, you got to read the room. Like, it can be flipped, like, because you're setting a precedent, and that's okay. So then the Republicans will be like, oh, noted. 2028, 2030. You know, so that's where you got to be real careful on this stuff. And I think leaving it to the will of the people to vote who they want to vote for should always be the way a democracy works. And we as in Australia, the US, we always laugh at some countries in the Middle East and this and that, they're not a democracy, ha ha ha. It's all. Well, we're not that far removed from that. We're not. We say we're a democracy in certain aspects of our political life, but I don't think it's as clean as that. Everything here is just done with legislation and introducing a new bill. That's how democracy functions. It's still heavily slighted towards one or two parties.
When you say, like, before you were saying like will of the people and like kind of anarchy type stuff, it's interesting to hear you say that because I feel like you have more to lose in that because you own more, right? Like you're wealthier. So if there was like an anarchy state scenario, wouldn't you be worried that like people would like come for you?
Well, I don't think they'd come for me.
Yeah.
Like, and if they do, good luck to them. But I think it's more when I say anarchy, I think it's. I'm not talking V for Vendetta type shit. You know, where you just everything implodes. I'm talking like our politicians needs to be a rile up at Parliament sometimes, which they kind of had during the COVID stuff.
For sure.
And that wakes them up a little bit to like, okay, like we can't just keep running riot. Obviously, don't condone violence, don't condone any of that. But all I'm saying is like. We haven't in Australia. I think it's been so good for so long. We've never faced. You know, a lot of my friends from Europe and parts of Asia that fled socialist communistic regimes, they've all spoken the same thing. There's never really been any kind of adversity here that's made the people have to come together and roll up against this government. We hope it never gets to that point, right? But and that's given the government free will to continue to just do whatever the fuck they want at all times. Whereas over there, they've been through these kinds of things, and I think it's a fair point. People that have fled those nations have always said it's been too easy for far too long in Australia, and there's been no adversity. And that's why people here blindly will just jump in to trust their government because they had no reason not to, right? Like it's like why wouldn't I? But it's like, well, they don't always have your best interest in mind. There's a lot of things going on between the lines. Whereas people that have fled those places are always kind of like, there's always one eye open towards the government, always just kind of like, I see what you're doing, I'm paying attention, like back it off. But generally, everyday Australians aren't like that. Like, I should be right. Our government's doing a good job. They've always got my back, and you're like, I think it's in the middle there somewhere, in my opinion.
Well, that's why even like during the pandemic, a lot of people who were like anti-authoritarian were like the sons and daughters of immigrants.
Yeah.
You know, because they were like, we've just come from somewhere where like.
Well, my grandma, man,
government
like,
overreach.
I've used the example that my grandma was in a retirement home or nursing home at that point during COVID, and that's when they had the love window where you couldn't go and see your grandma. You had to see her through a window.
Yeah.
And touch through a window. Just like all that kind of shit. They were locking them down, blah, 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 blah. And she was just kind of like fled communist Yugoslavia back in the day. And she's like, this is like PTSD for me. Yeah. I've seen this fucking story before. And, everyone's like, oh, crazy old lady, what the fuck would she know? And it's just like, well, like she lived in it. And she's like 9 p.m. curfew, like 1 hour of exercise. She's like, what the fuck? Like, oh, this is me like 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm pretty sure I left this shit. So she was just kind of like, to see this in Australia, she was dumbfounded, all in the guise of keeping people healthy. It's
weird that like some conspiracy theories, I don't know, sometimes I find them fun as well, like it's bad, but sometimes like talking about them. What do you have one at the front of your mind that like you've been going to recently?
Not really. Nothing front of mind. Like I think I'm just trying to figure out what the whole push with a lot of this climate stuff is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I just think that it just doesn't make sense to me that you've got politicians and celebrities and whatnot flying on private jets and then dictating to Johnny Smith, who's a plumber, that like you shouldn't drive your car to and from work because it's a diesel. And I'm just kind of like, hang on a second, like so that I just don't understand what the play is. Like I know there's plays with subsidies and all that kind of stuff, and there's obviously a huge financial component. I think there's a small number of people that are in it for the right reasons. That like, of course, we should not pollute our earth, and but as soon as you say anything against the climate accords and rules and all that. They're like, oh, he's pouring oil in the rivers. He's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all about keeping our water streams fresh and safe and non-polluted and all that kind of stuff. But I'm also not on making poor people now pay 10x for their gas heating.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. I just can't get my head around what are we doing? You know, we're building windmills, you know, in beautiful terrain in the middle of Australia that doesn't affect city people. It's fucking over country people, killing a bunch of birds. Don't think that's helping the environment. So you got all that balance stuff. So I get stuck in that, and I'm just like, what the hell are we doing? Like, is this really helping the environment? Is the electric vehicles, are they really helping the environment as much as we're led to believe? When you're plugging it into your coal-fired electricity at home to charge it for 8 hours overnight to drive it the next day, like all that kind of stuff. I try to read and do a lot of research on it. I'm just trying to figure out like what the hell's going on with it.
Feels like that's it's big in the culture of people like, well, why can they do that, but they're telling us not to do it. Like, I reckon your average Joe is kind of aware of that now. They're like,
but it's just small for a small time labourer that's driving a diesel truck to and from work to do plumbing jobs. You know, he's not moving the needle an iota. Australia in general is not moving the needle an iota worldwide when you talk about emissions, right? But like I said, it's always coming down to these people that are not living what they're doing. I would much rather, like, if you're preaching to me to live a certain way with the climate, and you're doing everything you can to be that, I would listen to you much more.
Yeah.
That would mean I hope you don't have an air conditioner. I hope you don't have a heater. I hope you don't have a gas-powered car. I hope you're not using coal. If you're doing all those things, I would seriously I would listen to you and give you so much more respect to take your message in.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
Right? But if you got
to sail to different
it's not only that, it's not, you know, that's a bit extreme because everyone should have heating and AC, but it's not even that. It's the extreme is they're on a fucking private jet.
Yeah.
Like taking routes where you can, like, you could have just jumped on a commercial. Do you need to go Melbourne, Sydney on a private jet? There's like 15, 20 flights a day, but you go on a private jet because you're a leader or a politician, and then you're on a podium saying, like, you know, 2030, the world's going to end. You're just like, oh, come on. And then to end that little rant about that is just what they're doing to kids with it in school. Like, you know, my kids are 5 and 7, and they've come back a few times saying, like, you know, the world's going to end if we don't fix X, Y, Z. I'm just like,
yeah, I got told that as well. You shouldn't tell a kid that. I remember that, like, the inconvenient truth in schools, like year 5, I think I was in, and then you watch this documentary and they're like, yo, kids, the world's ending. And we were just like, what the fuck?
But I'm just like,
you don't need to know that when you're 5.
Play with sand, toys, throw bark at each other, play tag, learn about numbers, reading and writing.
Yeah.
That's where you're sitting when you're 5 and 7, right? Like, and I'm just like,
this is 7-year-old's not going to solve it anyway. You know what I mean?
Just
like,
come home stressed out. Like, hang on, are we going to die? Like, am I going to see you guys in 2030? Hang on, that's in 6 years' time.
Yeah.
I'm only going to be, you know, 12, 13, 14. My parents can, you know, just like, but that kind of shit just does my head in. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that whole thing's a conspiracy theory, but that's kind of what I read up about a lot and just trying to figure out, like, what are we doing, you know? You
got my favorite Twitter. You're not shadow banned on Twitter yet, are you? You can't.
Well, no, Elon. I was for a while.
Oh, really?
I wasn't shadow banned, but I was definitely throttled pre-Elon. Because I noticed it was going like that with followers. Like, I'd get up 1,000 and then lose 1,000 and get up 1,000, lose 1,000.
Yeah.
But
I mean, Elon's such a funny. It's like before Christ.
Yep, but yeah, Twitter's fine now. Like I said, Instagram's heavily throttled, and Facebook as well, because they're part of it. Those two are pretty crazy.
And you wouldn't do TikTok?
We do some stuff on TikTok with the podcast stuff, but I'm for me personally to be doing dances and shit's not my thing.
No, they stopped that over the pandemic.
Did they?
Yeah.
No, but it's just all the TikTok trends when it first started. It's like, you got to do this, like touch your nose and then your ears, and then post a video. I'm like,
well, it's wild that it's gone from that to like Jon Stewart and like Joe Biden having an account.
Become more serious.
Yeah, like it's gone to almost YouTube.
Yeah, it's become more serious, but it's just like the whole thing for me was I barely wanted to get. I was not on Instagram. I was like the last frontier. I only got on Instagram because of my podcast.
Yeah,
like it's just easier to post clips and reels and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So I had this account that some kid was running with my name on it. Everyone thought it was me, and then I was like, oh shit. So then when I started it, we took that off him because it was Andrew Bogut, and he was posting like he was me, so that was easy to get off him.
He'd be the coolest kid at school.
Yeah. And then I just started using it mainly for podcasting, so I don't post a lot of personal stuff on there. But yeah, they heavily throttle. Like it's crazy, like how much my stuff gets throttled. But it is what it is.
What do you think of me? Like, what's your perspective on, like, do you think that in your mind, am I like left, middle? Like, what do you see
I
me
think you're
as?
pretty fair and balanced. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't think you're. Yeah, I've seen your takes that can be probably put forward as kind of more of a right leaning take and then more a left leaning take, and I think that's where you want to be. If you can piss off both sides,
Yeah, it's fun.
that's the best. No,
Yeah.
that means you're actually thinking about the issues. If you've got views, some that are deemed left and some that are deemed right, I think you're a human being.
Yeah.
If you're all in one way or the other, to me, you're programmed. You're in the cult and you're programmed. Like the big one was like the whole, for me, and I know it's a tough comparison, but you're like the bodily autonomy thing with abortion and the dudes that used to walk around and be like, are you my body, my choice? Yep. What about vaccines? You must, it's for the greater good. Wait, my body, my choice. Like they just fucking melt down because it's like, well, isn't that my body, my choice to get an injection in your arm? Then people will say, well, it's a health, there's a pandemic and all that, but that's a prime example that people are so programmed they can't even see the hypocrisy of what they're saying, and that's both sides of the ball, right? And I think you're kind of you go a little bit left, a little bit right, you're in the right spot.
If it's weird, like sometimes I reckon after our last podcast, like some people could be pissed off that I was speaking to you. I remember Bob Catter was the big one. Whereas when I spoke to Bob Catter, people were like, what
losing their shit.
Fuck? Yeah,
that's good though.
And I'm like, is it? Yeah.
You want to speak to people you don't agree with, man. That's it's a point of being an adult.
Yeah, and it's the most fun as well, I reckon.
Yeah, you want to pick apart, like, okay, like if you got some crazy whack shit, let's pick it apart. Let's talk about it. I love that shit, and I think we need more of it. Like the whole thing of just like, nah, like I can't talk to him because his views or her views are different to me. Well, that's not helping anything. It's not progressing us forward, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with the In Conversation podcast is hopefully get people from different sides of the ball talking and having an open, but you can't get these, you could not get someone from the left and the right that's in office right now to sit in this room for 3 hours and talk. There's no chance. There's no chance. And generally, unfortunately for me, my views generally are probably more middle, probably more often than not more towards the right than the left, but there's some views that I have that are left, but I can't get anyone from the left on to talk.
Okay.
I can get more people. More people are willing from the conservative right side to come and talk to me for 2 or 3 hours than from the left.
I reckon Friendly Geordies would talk to you.
Would he?
Yeah, and he's very left, and he's someone who's goes very hard for one side.
Yeah.
And like we talked about you before. I reckon he'd come on.
Yeah.
He'd be a great person to have.
He'd be good. Yeah, really. Good.
Be like I reckon that'd be sick to have you two talk.
Like I know some people, just from passing, like the people that helped a lot of his indiscretions with the law, let's say, when he did his thing up there in New South Wales with
fuck.
Airbnb the dude's house.
Crazy, yeah.
Was it?
Airbnb John Barilaro.
Yeah.
But then he got firebombed. And I went to his studio and I'm like, dude, you got to up the security. Like I just walked in.
Yeah. So he's but I'm best mates with some people that worked on that case for him. So from Canberra, the law firm that he hired. So I kind of have know people that know him. Yeah, like people like that, sure. But my point is more politicians. I love to get people that I heavily disagree with. Or
They're too scared though.
That's what I mean. It's just but you want to have those conversations. Like during COVID, I would have loved to have had pro-lockdown people, a pro-lockdown person that's notable in the community, and a person that's like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. Let's bring them in the room and have a chat for 2 or 3 hours, and then let the people just listen. That would be great. Couldn't find that shit. You go online, it's 2-3 minutes on ABC or 2-3 minutes on Sky or 9 News or whatever, and it's like, lockdown, good for the community, 1 hour exercise, see you later. And you're just kind of like, okay, like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I think we need to go as a society, is actually having these debates and conversations with people that you disagree with. And the part of being an adult is, okay, you and I disagree, but we respectfully move on. And then I hear your position. I don't agree with it, but we can respectfully move on, agree to disagree, and then we move on to the next thing. But, just shutting people down for a difference of opinion is just nonsense.
Have you ever had someone, like, whether it's a celebrity or just someone on the street, come up to you and just start talking like, hey, I disagree with you on this and I think this? Does that ever happen, or is it always online? Always online. Yeah. With people, with celebrities, it's a small example, but there's a girl named Annalie Maley. She's an WNBL player. I was I've been heavily against the transgenders in sport, or the men then transitioning to women and trying to go fucking dominate a women's league or a women's sport, and just being like, that's unacceptable. Like, no, we're not doing it. I'm not okay in that, and I don't think it's okay. And
I know majority of the girls in those leagues agree with my point of view, but are shit scared to say it.
Okay.
Which is fine. I get why, and I've been involved in a reason why, because I had girls leak me stuff that then they found out who leaked them, and they absolutely barrage these girls. But so when I was commenting about this stuff, she put a post out saying, you know, I'm uninformed and uneducated on the matter, and blah 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 blah, and I would love to have a conversation with you and really educate you on, you know, the whole you need to be re-educated thing. Cool, no worries. So I said, okay, let's do it. Let's set it up. I've got a podcast. You've got a podcast.
Okay.
Let's both record it, and we use it on our own platform. So like, say you and I doing this podcast, I use it on the Road Bows, you use it on yours, no problem, right? Yep, let's do it. That. I said, no worries. So I set up time and date with her, and I told my wife, I go, she will back out of this. I bet my life she will back out of this. No, we're all good. So we set a date. Then that date had to get changed a week later because she XYZ, whatever, no problem. People change dates. So my wife, she's going to bail out of this. Literally like 2 days before our scheduled Zoom, we're going to do it via Zoom. I hadn't heard crickets from her for a week. So I messaged and said, hey, just confirming we're on for, you know, Thursday morning. Don't hear anything back straight away. So I'm like, okay, something weird's going on. And then a day before, no, I'm not doing your podcast. All your followers have started abusing me. I've received death threats. I had someone come to my house, and I'm just like, bullshit. I don't believe that. So then I got in trouble for saying I'm victim blaming. I'm like, send me the police report. Someone came to your house. Did you call police? You know, so that's just an example of like.
It's wild that can't happen though. Like you guys can't have a conversation.
Yeah, I want to be more. I'm not going to be like, you know, abusing her for review. I want to hear what your point is. You're an athlete in the mix. I would love to have that discussion, but you can't have that. When it comes down to it, like you said, people that are celebrities or in the spotlight won't have those discussions, you know?
But the wild thing is that you would both get heat from people online for that. Like, that's the interesting thing. Like, she's going to get smashed and you're going to get smashed, both by different sides of, like, people online who are trolling both of you, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you're always going to have people that disagree, and that's fine. And online, but online's a whole different ballgame. It's you know, generally it's one person with 15 accounts and it looks like you're getting hundreds of tweets, right? It is. Because barometer for me is, and now that, you know, people will say it's because I'm big, strong, imposing, but when I'm out in public, I've only ever gotten into it with one bloke. One bloke at a basketball game. Because he was just like, oh, your podcast sucks, your views are terrible, all that kind of shit. I'm just like, okay, cool, bro. Like, whatever. Like, one guy in 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Thousands. Like, you know, thank you for what you do on social media. Look, I don't agree with everything you say, but, you know, thanks for fighting for me. I didn't get vaccinated, or, hey, I lost my job because of lockdowns. Heavy majority. But you go online and it feels like it's kind of, you know, 50-50, 60-40 at times, or sometimes it feels like a pile on. Yeah. In the community, it's completely different. So I weigh it on that. I weigh it on kind of when I'm out and about. Now, but then people say, oh, no one's going to come up to you because they're scared. Or it's like, well, I'm not going to fight you in public because you said I disagree with you because of this. It's like, fuck, well, I'll have a quick 5 minutes. If I've got time, I'm not rushing anywhere, and you're a random and you come up to me and say, I disagree with your views on this, all right, tell me why. And then I'm happy to have a quick discussion with you. I'm not going to be like, oh, fuck you, run away. Like, yeah. So to your point, it's the people in the spotlight, and it goes back to what you said before. They're working for 10 or Triple M or this or that. They got their little piece of the pie, and they know that if they have those long form discussions, eventually something's going to out that they're hypocritical about, or
you might be done.
You're going to get in trouble about. The longer you talk, the more you talk, something's eventually going to do. But when you're doing a 5-minute piece on the project, it's very easy to be a larrikin and hang shit on people and all that kind of stuff. When it's 3 hours or 2 hour long form discussion, you're gonna show the world that you're uninformed about something. Yeah,
folks, we've been talking. What do you reckon? That's an hour. I feel like we've covered everything. And more.
Yeah, that's why we go for. That's the Senator Roberts one was crazy because it wasn't meant to go that long. It went for, was it just over 3 hours? Yeah.
Damn, the Daily Mail's gonna clip that up.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. And it's funny because he's like, I'm massive, and he's a really small dude. Yeah. And I realized he was so small, so he's like, fuck, can I get a cushion for the couches? They're a bit high. So it was kind of it was funny, but yeah, these conversations aren't even an hour short at time. You know, but they're.
I even have like the Daily Mail journalist who has written like 4 or 5 articles about me. He still watches my stories. And for some reason,
you see him?
Yeah,
you see him?
He comes up near the top, but he doesn't follow me.
Is he slamming you in Daily Mail, is he?
Yeah. He comes up near the top. I'm like, what's he doing? Like, what's he, like, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
I did like your Woolworth stuff. Like,
True, yeah.
I did love your your anarchy
That was
towards,
kinda wild,
towards
yeah.
Coles and Woolworths. Go and steal from them. I like that.
Yeah, that was wild.
Because I agree. I'm like, why the fuck am I doing your job? Like, why do I have to check my own shit out? Like, what are we doing here? Like, yeah, I'm gonna put one in for me every now and then.
Yeah.
Like,
It was
it's
also
ridiculous.
wild, like when I mean I know he resigned, Brad Banducci, the CEO of Woolies, but it's like you got a guy from South Africa, like billionaire, coming into Australia, making all this dough, you know, and then now he gets to go back home to.
That's
pay
a lot
down
of our
and-
when you look at a lot of our multinational companies, man.
Yeah, they're foreign owned.
Yeah.
It
Or you look
sucks.
at
And I'm saying
Ju-
it sucks not for people might say a little bit, oh, he doesn't like it when like foreign people only. It's not that. It's just like the money should go back into the country.
for a multinational big time company like that. Yeah. And then you got Julian McGrant or Julian McGrant, you know who that is?
No.
The e-safety commissioner.
Okay, that name
Yeah,
rings a bell.
Look into her a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like she's an American
She
that's
be on
running.
you.
Oh yeah, there's an American that's running our e-safety now.
Okay.
And you're just like what is going on here?
Yeah.
She just got grilled in inquiry a couple of days ago whether she's had any connections with the CIA.
Damn.
And I think they worded the question wrong. I think she most likely has had contact, but hasn't. They worded it in a way, have you worked for the CIA in any way? And one of her colleagues said it was a conspiracy theory to ask that. That's a conspiracy theory to ask that question. You can't ask that. But another point, like why do we have someone like that running the Australian E-Safety Commission, which can deem taking down tweets that are inappropriate? So you could get, or I could have a tweet taken down for saying that a transgender person who's a man, for calling them misgendering and saying I believe that's a man. The E-Safety Commissioner can now go to Twitter and say, take Fergus's tweet down or we're fining you $700,000
Damn.
a day or whatever it is until it's taken down
Yeah.
in Australia. So then it gets blocked in Australia, but she doesn't realize VPNs exist, right? But to my point, it's we have a lot of people that I don't think have the best interests of Australia, running a lot of companies that affect everyday Australians heavily. You know?
It's scary society wise, but exciting comedy wise.
You got endless.
You've kind of got to laugh at it.
Australia's you got endless. Like it's an amazing. It's just amazing how much shit you can pull up just from Parliament. Like if you just watched Parliament on a daily basis, there's your material.
Yeah.
Just the amount of shit that happens in Parliament, and you're just like, these are the people representing us, and you're just like, oh my goodness, but it is interesting.
Well, I'm looking forward to the fucking Daily Mail journalist clip in this one. Which he will. But Bogues, thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, having me in the Gold Coast as well. Also, this is so sick. I'm keen to check it out.